I remember the feeling of dirt hitting my face. Heavy, desperate shovelfuls thrown by hands that wanted me gone. My husband Marcus stood above the pit, breathing hard, his silhouette black against the dying sun. I tried to scream, but the drug he'd slipped into my orange juice had paralyzed everything except my mind. My eyes were wide open, watching in absolute horror as the man I'd loved for 8 years buried me alive like garbage. The insurance money will set me free, Grace, he whispered between shovelfuls. $2 million. Can you believe your parents left us $2 million? Us. He said us like we were still a team. Like he wasn't murdering me. His face wasn't twisted with guilt or grief, it was calm, almost peaceful, like a man finally solving a problem that had bothered him too long. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed everything was him checking his watch, calculating how long until I'd suffocate. Then soil covered my eyes, filled my nose, pressed against my paralyzed lips. And I was alone in the earth, screaming silently into the void, drowning in dirt, dying by inches in the hands of love turned monstrous. Let me take you back 3 months, to the day my parents died. The police came to our door at midnight, car accident, they said. Instant. Both gone. I collapsed in Marcus's arms, and he held me through that first terrible night, whispering that we'd get through it together. He was perfect during those dark weeks. He made me tea, held my hair when grief made me sick, sat with me during sleepless nights when panic attacks stole my breath. I thought I was lucky to have him. What a fool I was. 2 weeks after the funeral, Marcus found the insurance policy in my father's locked desk drawer. I was in the shower when he discovered it, washing away tears that never seemed to stop. When I came out, he was sitting on our bed, staring at a paper like it was the winning lottery ticket. Grace, did you know about this? His voice was strange, tight, excited, dangerous. The policy was in my name. $2 million if I died. Marcus was listed as secondary beneficiary. Dad was always paranoid, I said, barely looking at it. I was too shattered to care about money. But Marcus stared at that policy for hours that night. I woke at 3 a.m. to find him still awake, the paper clutched in his fist, his eyes gleaming in the darkness like a predator spotting prey. The change in Marcus was subtle at first. He became obsessively attentive, insisting I rest while he handled everything. You've been through trauma, baby, he'd say, his hands on my shoulders feeling more like clamps than comfort. Let me take care of you. But strange things started happening. I'd catch him researching something on his laptop, and he'd slam it shut with guilty speed. Once I managed to glimpse the screen before he closed it, the words, undetectable poisons, and symptoms of natural death, glowing in the dark. Research for a crime novel, he explained too quickly. You know I've always wanted to write. I didn't remember him ever mentioning writing. Another time, I found him in the garage at midnight, mixing chemicals that made the air shimmer with toxic fumes. The smell burned my nostrils, made my head spin. Fertilizer for the garden, he said, but we didn't have a garden. Looking back, I see how carefully he planned my death. How he was testing methods, researching, preparing. Becoming a killer while I grieved and trusted. The man I'd married was disappearing, replaced by something cold and calculating that wore his face like a mask. The day it happened, Marcus made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, my favorite. He hummed while he cooked, and I remember thinking maybe he was finally coming out of the dark place he'd been in. You look exhausted, he said as I sat down. His voice was so gentle, so concerned. Didn't sleep well. I admitted the nightmares about Mom and Dad were getting worse. He squeezed my shoulder, and I felt his fingers press just a little too hard. Drink your juice. Vitamin C helps with stress. The juice tasted bitter. Wrong. I almost mentioned it, but Marcus was watching me so intently that I just smiled and drank it down to make him happy. Big mistake. The biggest mistake. Within 10 minutes, my fingers started tingling. Within 20, my legs stopped walking. I tried to stand and collapsed, my body hitting the floor hard while my mind screamed in perfect, terrible clarity. "Marcus!" I called, my voice already slurring. "Something's wrong." "I can't." He appeared in the doorway, and the expression on his face made my blood freeze. Empty. Cold. Waiting. He checked his watch like a scientist timing an experiment. "The paralytic works perfectly," he said. "You're conscious, though." "I made sure of that. I need you to understand exactly what's happening to you, Grace." He carried me to his truck like I was already a corpse. I could feel everything, every bounce, every turn, the afternoon heat baking through the windows, but my body was a prison I couldn't escape. My eyes stayed open, forced to watch tree branches pass overhead as he drove down a road I'd never seen. We stopped in dense woods that smelled like rot and old leaves. The grave was already there. Waiting. "I've been digging this for 3 weeks, Marcus said, almost proud, as he lifted me from the truck. "Every night after you fell asleep. Old man Henderson owns this land, but he hasn't walked back here in a decade. No one will ever find you." He lowered me into the hole, and I felt damp earth against my back, smelled the mineral stink of deep soil. My eyes could still move, so I looked up at him, begging silently, tears running down my paralyzed face. He avoided my gaze. "Your insurance money clears all my debts. I can invest in that restaurant. Start fresh. Maybe find someone who isn't so clingy and broken." His words were knives, but the first shovelful of dirt was a gunshot. It landed on my legs. The second hit my chest. He was burying me alive, and there was nothing I could do but watch and feel and scream inside my frozen body. Darkness came in terrible stages. First the weight on my legs, crushing and cold. Then my chest, making my paralyzed lungs feel like they'd explode. Then death filling my mouth, my nose, my eyes. Finally, complete blackness. Total. Absolute. I couldn't breathe, not just because of the soil, but because my lungs wouldn't expand. Panic flooded every cell of my body. My heart hammered uselessly. This was death. I was dying in the dark, murdered by trust, killed by love turned poisonous. Time stopped meaning anything. Seconds felt like hours. Was I buried for minutes? An hour? I couldn't tell. My thoughts spiraled between rage and disbelief. Then something changed. A voice in the darkness, or maybe a feeling, a presence, something ancient and furious. "Not yet," it whispered. "Not yet, Grace. Not like this." It spread through my chest like liquid fire. My fingers twitched. Then my hand. The paralysis was fading, but not naturally. This felt different. Wrong. Powerful. My nails dug into packed earth above me. I began to claw upward with strength that shouldn't exist. Dirt filled my mouth, but I didn't care. I dug like a demon possessed, because maybe I was. Maybe I'd already died and this was hell giving me one last chance at revenge. I dug through 5 feet of earth with fingers that broke and bled. My nails tore off completely. Soil filled my lungs, but I kept clawing, kept pushing, kept refusing to accept death. Hours passed, I don't know how many. The drug should have killed me. The suffocation should have stopped my heart. But something inside me, rage or will or pure hatred, wouldn't let go. When my hand finally burst through into open air, I gasped like I'd been underwater for eternity. I pulled myself out of that grave inch by agonizing inch, my white dress shredded and black with dirt, my body more corpse than human. The moon hung fat and yellow above me, so it was night now. Marcus had buried me in late afternoon. I'd been underground for hours. Impossible. Medically impossible. But I was here, breathing air that tasted like copper and victory. I lay on the disturbed earth, my body shaking violently, staring at stars I never thought I'd see again. Something had changed inside me down in that grave. Something fundamental. I wasn't just Grace anymore. I was something that had crawled back from death with a singular purpose burning in my chest like a second heart. Marcus thought he'd killed me for money. He had no idea what he'd actually created. The walk out of those woods was endless. Every step sent lightning bolts of pain through my destroyed feet. Branches tore at my ruined dress. Animals scattered as I stumbled past, probably sensing something wrong, something that shouldn't be alive. When I finally reached the highway, dawn was breaking red and angry across the horizon. A semi-truck nearly crashed when the driver saw me. He slammed on his brakes, rubber screaming on asphalt. Jesus Christ! He jumped out, his face going pale. Lady, who did this to you? I caught my reflection in his truck's chrome mirror. My face was caked with dried blood and grave dirt. My eyes looked feral, wrong, like something that had died and crawled back. My lips were cracked and bleeding. I looked like every ghost story ever told. My husband, I said, my voice raw and strange. My husband buried me alive. The driver, his name was Tom, drove me straight to County General Hospital. Doctors swarmed me, their faces showing shock, then confusion, then disbelief as they examined me. How are you alive? One whispered to another. The drug in her system should have stopped her heart hours ago. And she was buried. This is medically impossible. But impossible was standing right in front of them, bleeding and breathing and burning with rage. The police came to my hospital room within an hour. Detective Ramirez looked at me like I was a magic trick he couldn't figure out. I told him everything, the poison, the burial, Marcus's cold face as he shoveled dirt onto my living body. We found the grave, Ramirez confirmed. Exactly where you said. And we found traces of your blood, your torn clothing. Mrs. Peterson, do you understand how impossible your survival is? I smiled, and it felt like my face was cracking. Tell that to Marcus when you arrest him. We will, Ramirez promised. But first, what do you want to do? What did I want? I wanted Marcus to feel what I felt. I wanted him to know the terror, the betrayal, the absolute certainty of death. I wanted to haunt him before the law touched him. His plan was to hold my funeral tomorrow, right? I asked. Ramirez nodded, confused. Yes, it's already arranged. Wait. You're not thinking, I want to attend my own funeral, I said. I want to see his face when he's pretending to mourn me. And then I want him to see me. I want him to think death itself sent me back. Ramirez looked uncertain, but something in my eyes made him nod slowly. Okay. But Mrs. Peterson, you look like you've been through hell. Good, I whispered. That's exactly what I want him to see. My best friend Maya picked me up from the hospital in a beat-up Honda. When she saw me walking toward her car, she actually screamed. Grace! Oh my God, Marcus said you were dead. He said you had a heart attack yesterday. The funeral is today. So he'd already filed the insurance claim. Already started spending my death money in his head. Perfect. Maya, I need your help, I said, sliding into the passenger seat. And you absolutely cannot tell anyone I'm alive. Not yet. She stared at me. At my hollow eyes, my bruised throat, the dirt still under my broken nails, and slowly nodded. What do you need? That's real friendship. Not asking why. Just showing up. I told her everything as we drove to her apartment. She cried when I described the burial, cursed Marcus with words I'd never heard her use. That monster, she hissed. That absolute psychopath. Grace, we should go to the police right now. But I shook my head. Not yet. First, I want to go to my funeral. I want to see him play the grieving widower. I want to watch him cry fake tears. And then, I paused, remembering the darkness, the suffocation, his face as he buried me. Then I want him to see me walk through those funeral home doors. I want to watch his soul leave his body. Morrison's funeral home smelled like lilies and lies. Maya and I arrived early, before the other mourners. The funeral director nearly had a heart attack when he saw me. Mrs. Peterson. But the body, the death certificate, there is no body, I said, my voice cold as the grave had escaped. My husband tried to murder me. Is he here? Morrison's hand shook as he pointed toward the chapel. Arranging flowers. He's been here since dawn, looking so broken, but I was already walking, my footsteps echoing on marble floors. The chapel was decorated beautifully. White lilies everywhere, my favorites. Soft piano music. Photos of me smiling, laughing, alive. And there at the front, beside an empty casket that was supposed to hold my corpse, was Marcus. He looked perfect. Red-rimmed eyes from fake crying. Rumpled suit. Trembling hands as he arranged the wreath. The picture of a devastated husband. He sensed someone enter and turned, probably expecting a mourner to comfort. Instead, he saw me. His face went through a transformation I'll treasure forever. First confusion, who is this dirty woman? Then recognition, that's my wife's face. Then understanding, but she's dead, I buried her. Finally, absolute terror, this isn't possible, she's a ghost, I'm seeing a ghost. The flowers fell from his hands. His knees actually buckled. Hello, Marcus, I said. Miss me? Grace. His voice cracked like thin ice. This isn't real. You're dead. I felt the dirt cover your face. I heard you stop breathing, did you hear me stop breathing? I walked toward him slowly, deliberately, my bare feet leaving bloody prints on the chapel's white carpet. Or did you just assume I was dead because that's what you wanted? Tell me, Marcus, did it feel good? Killing your wife for money. He stumbled backward, hitting the empty casket. His hands scrabbled at the polished wood. The drug, he whispered. The paralytic was supposed to, your heart should have, how are you standing here? Maybe hell didn't want me. I was close now, close enough to smell his expensive cologne, his terror sweat underneath. Maybe the universe decided I deserved the chance to watch you pay. Does it matter how I survived, Marcus? I'm here. And you're finished. He fell to his knees, and I watched him scramble for a response. His mind was racing, I could see it in his eyes. Finally, he settled on contrition. Grace, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. The debt, the pressure, I wasn't thinking straight. Please, we can fix this. I'll get help. We can go to therapy. You'll go to prison, I interrupted. The police are outside. I told them everything. They found your grave, Marcus. Took photos. Collected evidence. Found the drugs you ordered online. It's over. His expression changed so fast it was like watching a mask fall off. The grief vanished. The remorse evaporated. What was left was something ugly and cold. You can't prove anything, he snarled, standing up. It's your word against mine. Who's going to believe you survived being buried alive? You look insane, Grace. You look like you've lost your mind. I'll say you had a psychotic break after your parents died. That you drugged yourself and made up this whole story for attention. He stepped toward me, and for a second I saw murder in his eyes again. You should have stayed dead, he hissed. You should have stayed in that fucking grave where you belonged. Actually, said a voice from the doorway, we have plenty of evidence. Detective Ramirez stepped into the chapel with 2 uniformed officers. Marcus Peterson, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and about 6 other charges we're still figuring out. They handcuffed him right there beside my empty casket. As they read him his rights, Marcus kept staring at me with pure hatred burning in his eyes. "You regret this," he spat as they dragged him past me. "I'll make you regret not dying when you had the chance." I leaned in close enough to whisper in his ear. "I spent hours buried alive in the dark because of you. There's nothing you can do to me that's worse than what I've already survived. But you'll spend decades in a cell, and every single night you close your eyes and remember, you failed. I won. Death sent me back just to watch you fall." After they took Marcus away, my legs finally gave out. I collapsed into a pew, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Maya rushed to my side, wrapping her arms around me. "You did it," she whispered. "You faced him. You won." But I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt hollowed out, like the grave had taken something from me I'd never get back. Detective Ramirez sat beside me, his notepad open. "Mrs. Peterson, I need your full statement. But first, the medical examiner wants to run more tests. What you survived shouldn't be possible. The drug, the burial, the time frame, by every medical standard, you should be dead. How did you do it?" I looked at him with eyes that had seen darkness most people couldn't imagine. "I got angry," I said simply. "I got so angry that death itself couldn't hold me." "Is that scientific enough for you, detective?" He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "The trial will be difficult. Marcus's lawyer is already claiming you staged everything. They'll say you're mentally unstable, that you orchestrated this whole thing for attention or insurance money. They'll try to make you look like the villain." I laughed, and it sounded wrong even to my own ears. "Let them try. I have dirt from his grave under my nails. I have wounds that prove I clawed through 5 feet of earth. I have the truth, detective. And the truth doesn't need to be possible, it just needs to be real." The trial took 6 months to start. 6 months of living in my spare room because I couldn't go back to the house Marcus and I had shared. 6 months of nightmares where I was back in the grave, the dirt filling my mouth, the darkness crushing my chest. 6 months of watching Marcus's lawyer spin stories on the news about poor Marcus, victim of a mentally unstable wife. The media called me the woman who crawled back from death. Some people believed me. Others said I was a liar, an attention seeker, a gold digger who'd faked everything for insurance money. Death threats came through social media. Letters calling me a fraud. But I endured it all because I knew the truth. And truth has a weight that lies can never match. The night before the trial started, I couldn't sleep. I stood at Maya's window, staring at the darkness, remembering another darkness that had tried to swallow me whole. "Grace." Maya's voice was soft behind me. "You okay?" "He tried to erase me," I whispered. He looked at me and saw $2 million, not a person. Not his wife. Just money walking around in a body he needed to bury. And the worst part, I never saw it coming. I trusted him completely. Right up until the moment I felt the drug hit my system. Maya hugged me from behind. "You're going to destroy him in court. You're going to make everyone see exactly what he is." I hoped she was right. Because if Marcus walked free, I didn't know what I'd become. The trial began on a Monday that felt like the end of the world. The courtroom was packed with journalists, curious onlookers, my distant relatives, and Marcus's family who still insisted he was innocent. I sat at the prosecution table wearing a simple blue dress, my hands folded to hide the trembling. Marcus sat across the aisle in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, looking like a respectable businessman instead of a monster who'd buried his wife alive. The prosecutor, Lisa Chen, gave her opening statement with brutal clarity. "Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Peterson saw his wife as a payday. When he learned about her $2 million insurance policy, he didn't see the woman he promised to love and cherish. He saw an opportunity. He researched poisons. He dug a grave in advance. He drugged her, buried her alive, and left her to suffocate in the dark. The only reason Grace Peterson is sitting in this courtroom today is because of a miracle, one that Marcus never anticipated. She refused to die. Marcus's lawyer, Richard Carver, painted a different picture. The defense will prove that Grace Peterson is a deeply disturbed woman who orchestrated an elaborate hoax. She dug a shallow hole, partially buried herself, and created this dramatic story for insurance money and attention. My client loved his wife. He grieves for their marriage. The real crime here is false accusation. I watched the jury as Carver spoke. Some looked skeptical. Others looked curious. All I needed was for them to see the truth. The prosecution built its case piece by piece. Tom the truck driver testified first, describing how he'd found me staggering along the highway at dawn. She looked like something from a horror movie, he said. Covered in dirt and blood. Eyes wild. She kept saying her husband buried her alive. I've been driving trucks for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Medical experts testified about the drug in my system, a veterinary paralytic that Marcus had ordered online. This substance is not available for human use, Dr. Singh explained. It causes complete paralysis while leaving the victim fully conscious. The dose Mrs. Peterson received was precisely calibrated to immobilize but not immediately kill. Someone researched this carefully. The forensic team showed photos of the grave that made several jurors look away. My torn fingernails embedded in the soil. Fabric from my dress. Blood stains. The evidence shows Mrs. Peterson clawed her way up from approximately 5 feet underground, the expert testified. The physical trauma to her hands and body is consistent with her account. How she survived the drug and lack of oxygen remains unexplained, but the grave itself proves attempted murder. Marcus's lawyer objected constantly, trying to introduce doubt, but the evidence kept mounting. Each piece another nail in Marcus's coffin. The irony wasn't lost on me. On day 3, I testified. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking through fire, every eye on me, judging, assessing, deciding if I was victim or liar. Lisa Chen started gently. Grace, tell the jury what happened the morning your husband tried to kill you. I took a deep breath and began. I described waking up, having breakfast, the bitter taste in the orange juice that I should have questioned. I described the paralysis creeping through my body like ice in my veins, the terror of being fully conscious but unable to move. He carried me to his truck, I said, my voice steady even as my hands shook. I could feel everything. Every bump in the road. I could see tree branches passing overhead. I knew where we were going even before I saw the grave. And the whole time, my mind was screaming, but my body wouldn't respond. I couldn't even close my eyes to escape what was happening. The courtroom was silent except for my voice. He lowered me into the hole he'd dug. I could smell the dirt, feel how cold it was. And then he started shoveling. The first load hit my legs. The second hit my chest. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I could only lie there and watch him bury me alive, one shovelful at a time. Several jurors were crying now. One woman had her hand over her mouth. Tell us about being underground, Lisa prompted gently. I closed my eyes, remembering. The darkness was total. Complete. I've never experienced anything like it. And the weight, the soil pressing down on every part of me. I couldn't breathe because the drug had paralyzed my lungs. My heart was still beating, but I knew I was dying. I could feel my consciousness starting to fade. I opened my eyes and looked directly at the jury. But then something happened. The paralysis started to wear off. It shouldn't have, the drug should have killed me first. But my fingers started to move. Then my hand. And I realized I had a choice. I could lie there and let Marcus win, or I could fight. My voice grew stronger. So I dug. I clawed through 5 feet of packed earth with my bare hands. My nails broke off. My fingers bled. Dirt filled my mouth and lungs, but I kept digging because the alternative was dying in that grave. And I refused to let Marcus murder me for insurance money. I refused to let him win. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even Marcus's lawyer looked shaken. How long were you underground? Lisa asked. Hours. I don't know exactly how many. Long enough that it should have killed me. Long enough that every doctor who's examined me says my survival is medically impossible. But I'm here. I survived. And Marcus is going to pay for what he did. The cross-examination was vicious. Richard Carver circled me like a shark. Mrs. Peterson, you've admitted you were on anti-anxiety medication after your parents' deaths, correct? Yes. And you experienced severe depression. I was grieving. That's normal. You also had insomnia, weren't you prescribed sleeping pills? Yes, but... So you were taking multiple medications that affect mental state and perception, correct? His voice was sharp, attacking. I met his eyes. I know what happened to me was real. No medication causes hallucinations of being buried alive. But isn't it true that grief and medication can cause breaks with reality? Couldn't you have experienced a psychotic episode, buried yourself partially, and created this story? No, I said firmly. The grave was 5 feet deep. I had Marcus's drug in my system. These are facts, not delusions. Carver paced, performing for the jury. Multiple medical experts have testified your survival is impossible. Doesn't that suggest something else happened? That maybe your version of events isn't accurate. I leaned forward, my voice cold. I know it's impossible. I was there. I felt every second of dying and somehow not dying. Just because you can't explain it doesn't make it a lie. Marcus tried to kill me. Everything else is just your client trying to escape justice. Your Honor. Carver's face was red. The witness is being hostile, she's answering your questions, the judge said dryly. Continue, counselor. The defense's case was desperate. Marcus didn't testify, Carver advised him that his cold demeanor would destroy him. Instead, they called character witnesses. Marcus's sister wept on the stand. My brother would never hurt anyone. He loved Grace. This is a nightmare. But Lisa Chen's cross-examination was surgical. Did you know your brother researched undetectable poisons 2 weeks before Grace's disappearance? Did you know he purchased paralytic drugs online? Did you know he drove to the isolated property multiple times in the weeks before? The sister faltered, her certainty crumbling. Marcus's lawyer tried to introduce alternate theories, that I'd staged everything, that I'd had a mental breakdown, that the evidence was circumstantial. But they couldn't explain the grave. Couldn't explain the drug. Couldn't explain my injuries. On the final day, closing arguments began. Lisa Chen stood before the jury, her voice ringing with conviction. Marcus Peterson planned his wife's murder with chilling precision. He researched. He prepared. He executed. Grace Peterson survived through a combination of will and miracle that we may never understand. But the evidence of his crime is undeniable. Don't let him walk free because she was strong enough to live. Carver gave his final attempt. The prosecution wants you to believe an impossible story. But the simpler truth is that Grace Peterson is troubled and seeking attention. Don't destroy an innocent man's life on an impossible tale. The jury left to deliberate. And I waited. 2 days. The jury deliberated for 2 days while I paced Maya's apartment, barely sleeping, barely breathing. Every scenario played through my head. What if they believed Marcus? What if they thought I was lying? What if he walked free and I'd gone through all of this for nothing? On the third day, my phone rang. "The jury's back," Lisa Chen said. "We need you at the courthouse now." The courtroom was packed again. Journalists crowded the back rows. Marcus was brought in, his face composed but pale. I sat in the front row, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The judge entered. As the jury reached a verdict, the foreman stood, a middle-aged woman with steel in her eyes who'd watched me testify with tears streaming down her face. "We have, Your Honor." The moment stretched like taffy, like time itself was holding its breath. "On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant?" Silence. Absolute silence. Then, "Guilty." The word hit like a thunderclap. Marcus's family cried out. His mother screamed. But I just sat there, letting the word wash over me like rain after a drought. Guilty. He was guilty. The jury believed me. Justice was real. The foreman continued. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and aggravated assault. Marcus's face had gone white. His hands gripped the table. He looked at me, and I saw everything in his eyes: rage, disbelief, the dawning realization that he'd failed completely. The judge set sentencing for the following week. When that day came, the courtroom was somber. Marcus stood before the bench, his expensive suit wrinkled now, his perfect hair mossed. The judge looked at him with open disgust. "Mr. Peterson, I've been on this bench for 23 years. I've seen many terrible crimes. But what you did, drugging your wife, burying her alive, leaving her to suffocate in the dark while you prepare to spend her insurance money, that displays a depravity that shocks the conscience." Marcus said nothing. What could he say? "I hereby sentence you to 25 years to life in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. Take him away." The bailiffs moved forward. As they handcuffed him, Marcus suddenly turned to me. His face was twisted with hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "Grace," he shouted as they dragged him toward the door. "You should have stayed dead. You should have rotted in that grave." I stood up slowly, calmly. Everyone was watching, but I only saw him. "But I didn't stay dead, Marcus. And that's something you'll think about every single day for the next 25 years. Every night in your cell, you close your eyes and remember, you failed. I clawed my way back from hell just to watch you fall. And it was worth it." They pulled him away, his screams echoing down the hallway. The sound was music. Victory. Justice. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement, my voice steady. Marcus Peterson tried to murder me for money, and he failed. I hope anyone watching this who feels trapped or afraid knows that survival is possible. Fight back. Refuse to die. Justice will come. That night, Maya and I celebrated with wine and tears and laughter that felt like exhaling after holding your breath for months. Life after the trial was surreal. I was famous, the woman who refused to stay dead. Book deals and movie offers flooded my email. Oprah's people called. 60 Minutes wanted an interview. I turned down most of them. I wasn't interested in fame. The insurance company finally released the $2 million after Marcus's conviction. I donated $1 million to domestic violence organizations and buried trauma research. The other $1 million, I used to disappear. I sold everything connected to Marcus, the house, the furniture, anything he touched. Bought a small cottage 3 hours north where nobody knew my story. Maya helped me move, unpacking boxes in my new life. "You really okay?" she asked one evening as we sat on my new porch watching fireflies. I thought about it. Was I okay? I still had nightmares about the grave. Still woke up gasping, feeling phantom death in my mouth. still flinched when someone approached from behind. But I was also here. Breathing. Free. I'm healing, I said finally. It's slow. But every day I wake up in this cottage instead of that grave is a victory. Marcus wanted to erase me for money. Instead, I erased him from my life and kept the money. There's poetry in that. Maya squeezed my hand. You're the strongest person I've ever known. I smiled. I'm just angry enough to refuse to die. There's a difference. 6 months after Marcus's sentencing, a letter arrived. Prison mail. His handwriting on the envelope made my skin crawl, but I opened it anyway. Grace, I can't sleep. Every night I close my eyes and I'm back there, standing over that grave, watching you look up at me. Your eyes. I'll never forget your eyes. Full of terror and betrayal. I see them everywhere. In my cell walls. In my dreams. I'm in hell, Grace. A hell of my own making. I just wanted you to know, I'm sorry. Not because it'll change anything. Just because it's true. What I did was unforgivable. I know that now. I hope someday you can find peace. I never will. I read it twice, feeling nothing. No pity. No anger. Just emptiness. He wanted forgiveness I'd never give. I wrote back a single sentence on prisoner-proof stationery. I found peace the moment they locked your cell. You'll find yours never. Then I burned his letter in my fireplace and watched the ashes float up the chimney. Marcus would spend decades in a concrete box, haunted by what he'd done. But I was free. I'd crawled out of death itself. I'd faced my murderer in court and won. And now, finally, I was living, not the life I'd planned, but something better. A life I'd earned with blood and dirt and stubborn refusal to die. As I watched the last ash disappear into the night sky, I smiled. Marcus had tried to bury me. Instead, he'd only buried himself. And I'd come back from hell with nothing left to fear and everything left to live for. Death had sent me back. And I wasn't done yet.